Winning the Super Bowl is the ultimate goal for every NFL team every season, and there's nothing sweeter than winning one. But winning it again the next season is pretty tough. 57 teams have had the opportunity to repeat, and only 9 have done so. Some teams remain competitive while just falling short, and yet there are others who just plain stink and look more like Super Bowl chumps than Super Bowl champs. That's who we're looking at today. I thank you for joining us as we count down the 10 worst seasons by defending Super Bowl champions. And as always, we'll be using C-Score for these determinations. For a deeper explanation of how C-Score works, be sure to check out this video's description. We begin at number 10 with the 1970 Kansas City Chiefs. They put together a 7-5-2 record. It's important to remember that the NFL didn't institute overtime in the regular season until 1974. They outscored their opponents, but by just 28 points, against the league's 16th hardest schedule. All this added up to a C-score of 4.017. The 1969 Chiefs were the final AFC champions and winners of Super Bowl IV, defeating the Minnesota Vikings 23-7 in that game, despite being 2-touchdown underdogs. Once the merger took place in 1970, just about every newly integrated AFL team struggled, and the Chiefs were no exception, although on the whole they fared better than most of their colleagues. They finished one game behind the Raiders for the division lead and were kept out of the playoffs. At number 9 are the 2018 Philadelphia Eagles. They are the second and the last team that will be showing up on this list with a winning record, clocking in at 9-7, outscoring their opponents but by only 19 points against the tied for 11th hardest schedule in the league, giving them a C-score of 3.772. In this follow-up season to the first and to date only Super Bowl the Eagles have ever won, a 41-33 shootout victory of the New England Patriots, things were looking a bit dicey. At 6-7 and at no point 2 games over 500, Philly won their last 3 to sneak into the playoffs as the number 6 seed. They then won in the wildcard round against the Bears in the famous double doink game, before finally falling to the top-seeded New Orleans Saints. Next up at number 8 are the 2003 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Stuck in a holding pattern all season and seeming destined for an 8-8 record, they actually finished 7-9, despite outscoring their opponents by a fairly healthy 37 points. They were somewhat held back by that strength of schedule though, and they culled together a C-score of 2.868. Like the Eagles before them, this was the follow-up to Tampa's first ever Super Bowl championship, a 48-21 destruction of the Oakland Raiders. This following years, nay, decades, of fielding a terrible on-field product. The 03 season wasn't meant to be though, and it started with a blocked extra point in Week 2 against the Panthers that led to an overtime loss. They won back-to-back games only once very late in the season, and only went 2-7 in games decided by one possession. We're used to seeing the Giants on these kinds of lists, but not so much the 20th century versions. At number 7 is the 1991 squad, complete with a new head coach and an 8-8 record. They played a tough schedule, tied for 6th hardest in the league, but were outscored by exactly 1 point per game, culminating in a 1.212 C-score. Speaking of 1 point, that's how many points the Giants beat the Bills by to win Super Bowl 25. Wide right made for a 20-19 victory. But while the Bills kept making the playoffs, this Giants team wasn't up to the task. At no point in the season were they ever more than 1 game above or below 500, and only 4 of their 16 games were decided by more than 1 possession. They were simply the epitome of mediocrity all season, which isn't so stellar for a defending champion. And looky here, we have the Giants again. This time the defending champions from 1987 at number 6. Now this team comes with an asterisk, as it was in a strike-shortened and strike-disrupted season, explaining their 6-9 record. They once again had a tough schedule, 6th best in the league, but they were outscored by 32 points and registered our first negative C-score of minus 3.363. The Giants had been terrible for almost the entirety of the Super Bowl era, before finally breaking through in Super Bowl 20 with a 39-20 win over the Denver Broncos. But 1987 wasn't a great encore. They had already started the season 0-2 when the strike took effect, and they lost all 3 replacement player games by a combined 49 points, before going 6-4 the rest of the way. Because of those replacement game outcomes, it's admittedly somewhat unfair to have them on this list, but they do so with that asterisk. And here now we see the actual champions from 1987, who fell off the next season in the 1988 Washington Redskins, here at number 5. No asterisk needed here. The Skins dropped to a 7-9 record while getting outscored by 42 points across the season, albeit against the 10th hardest schedule in the league. That, though, wasn't enough to stop their C-score from dropping to negative 6.152. The Redskins were 8-4 in non-replacement games in 1987 and got to avoid the NFC's 2 best teams in the playoffs, but they won their Super Bowl in an emphatic manner, crushing the Broncos 42-10 with an unforgettable 35-point blitz in the second quarter alone. That magic was gone in '88, as they lost 5 of their last 6 games, while only going 2-4 in games decided by more than 1 possession. If we needed an asterisk before, then we need a triple asterisk here. At number 4 are the 1982 San Francisco 49ers, a season where 7 games were completely wiped off the schedule, accounting for their 3-6 record. Despite being 3 games under 500, the Niners just barely outscored their opponents, although their schedule was weak, leading to a negative 6.942 C-score. The 49ers broke through in Super Bowl 16, defeating the Cincinnati Bengals 26-21 and kickstarting a long-lasting dynasty. 1982 just proved to be a speed bump. The Niners lost their first 2 games of the season by 9 total points, and once the strike hit, they never could quite find their groove. They only went 1-5 in one-score games and could have used those other 7 games to at least pull out a more respectable record, but it wasn't meant to be. Before the Baltimore Ravens developed a reputation for coming up short in the playoffs, they did win a couple of Super Bowls. But their 2013 season as reigning Super Bowl champions wasn't great, and it gets them ranked here at number 3. Their 8-8 record doesn't look terrible, but their bottom 10 schedule and getting outscored is just part of the underlying issues with this team, demonstrated by a negative 7.726 C-score. It was in the Har Bowl, or the Blackout Bowl, in Super Bowl 47 that Baltimore ended their improbable playoff run with a victory over the San Francisco 49ers, 34-31, handing San Fran the franchise's first ever Super Bowl loss. Yet that team was also flawed, which carried over into 2013. They were smashed on opening day by the Broncos. They did make their way to an 8-6 record and looked like a potential playoff contender before losing their last 2 games by a combined 51 points. Playing their final season in Oakland before moving to Los Angeles, the 1981 Raiders didn't have a good time of things as defending Super Bowl champions, ranking at number 2 on this list. They dropped down to a 7-9 record against the top 10 schedule, but they looked the part of a worse team than that, getting outscored by 70 points and pushing their C-score all the way down to negative 9.56. The 1980 Raiders were not only the first team since the merger to make the Super Bowl as a wildcard entrant, they were the first to win it all by handling the Philadelphia Eagles 27-10 in Super Bowl 15. They once again came up short in the division in 1981, finishing all the way down in 4th place, while never being above 500 except for a 1-week stint at 2-1. They did have a winning record in one-score games, but they took 7 losses by multiple possessions. The most recent team on this countdown just so happens to also be our number 1 entrant, the 2022 Los Angeles Rams. Every other team on this list avoided double-digit losses and won at least 6 games, outside of the 82 49ers who only got to play 9. This Rams team fell all the way to 5-12, being outscored by 77 points, and were only somewhat saved by playing the league's 10th hardest schedule. It didn't save their C-score though, from dropping to the negative double digits, coming in at negative 11.529. The 2021 Rams were certainly talented, but it was a confluence of events that allowed that team their playoff run, winning 3 straight games by exactly 3 points, including their win of 23-20 over the Cincinnati Bengals in Super Bowl 56. They couldn't carry that magic over into 2022 though, which became immediately evident in their 21-point loss on opening day at home to the Buffalo Bills. They rebounded slightly to 2-1 and then 3-3 before ending the season on a 2-9 run, with 5 of those losses coming by double digits. Looking at the top 10 as a whole, it's interesting to note that only 6 teams out of 57 came back the year after winning the Super Bowl and performed as a below-average team, barely more than 10%. And even 2 of those teams have legitimate asterisks attached to that performance level. The parity associated with the salary cap and the free agency era only turned out 4 of the top 10, but it might yet be possible for a future Super Bowl champion to come back the next season and surpass the Rams' futility, but only time will tell. Thank you so much for watching this video. I truly hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to give it a like and kick that YouTube algorithm into gear. And while you're at it, take the time to share it with some friends, and if you have yet to do so, subscribe to the channel and ding the bell icon for notifications on all our future releases. Did any of these teams surprise you? Was there somebody else you were expecting to see here? Feel free to sound off on that or anything else in the comments. I do love hearing from you all, whether you're praising the content or calling me all sorts of colorful names. Any ideas for future videos are always appreciated. Be sure to check out our playlist of NFL rankings videos. Thank you again for watching, and until next time, I hope you have an awesome day.